Hello, welcome to Chapter 3 Podcast, the show for readers of science fiction, fantasy, and romance. This is Season 1, Episode 9. I'm Bethany, your host, and joining me today are YouTubers Izzy from Happy For Now and Jess Owens. In today's episode, we will be recapping 2020 in the book world and including a look back at authors and YouTubers behaving badly. I've invited Izzy and Jess to join me because they both host great news and drama update shows on their channels. And if you want to support this podcast and get early access to episodes and exciting bonus content from all of our guests, including the ones here today, check out our Patreon linked in the show notes. But before our conversation, it's time for On My Radar, where I share recent or upcoming book releases in science fiction, fantasy, and romance that I'm excited about, and then our guests will have the opportunity to share one as well. The books for today's episode are actually all going to be released on February 2nd, 2021. Apparently everything is coming out that day, with the exception of the guest recommendations, which may include any upcoming release. First up, we are going to be getting an exciting new book from Sylvain Neuvel, A History of What Comes Next, a darkly satirical look at 1940s rocketry with an exploration of the amorality of progress and the nature of violence. Sounds interesting. Then we're also getting a nonfiction title that looks really cool. I don't usually include nonfiction, but you will see why. It's called Why Wakanda Matters, What Black Panther Reveals About Psychology, Identity, and Communication by Sheena C. Howard. This is a collection of essays from leading experts in a variety of fields relating Black Panther and the world of Black Panther to topics including cognitive dissonance, intergenerational trauma and resistance, collective identity, and cultural and racial identity. I just thought that looked fascinating. Then Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell is being pitched as Ancillary Justice meets Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's a debut with a queer love story in space and plenty of political intrigue. Then if you're looking for a YA romance, you might try Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson. This one follows a plus-size Black teen girl who falls in love not just with a boy, but also with herself. Then for the first book in a new historical fantasy duology, we're getting Muse by Brittany Cavallaro. Pitched as American Royals meets The Winner's Curse, Muse is set in an alternate history American monarchy, where a girl grapples for control of her own life in the middle of a looming war. A standalone YA fantasy that looks interesting is Unchosen by Catherine Blair, a fiercely feminist tale with a horrifying curse, swoon-worthy sea captains, and the power of one girl to choose her fate. And then lastly for today, We Could Be Heroes by Mike Chen is a new sci-fi release about unlikely friends and the power of choosing who you want to be. Arch rivals have no memory of their past and few clues to their identity. So when they meet in a memory loss support group, they realize the only way to reveal their hidden pasts might be each other. So there's a few titles all coming out February 2nd that look pretty interesting. Again, those are always linked in the show notes. With that said, please join me in welcoming Izzy and Jess to the show. Thank you guys for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
I feel honored to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to have you. You guys are perfect for this episode. If you want to briefly introduce yourselves to our listeners and also share your pick for an exciting upcoming book release.
Hi, I'm Jess Owens, not Jesse Owens, the famous track star, but Jess Owens. That's my channel name. I talk about bookish drama, but in addition, books that I read, which is primarily adult science fiction and fantasy. And a book that I'm really excited about comes out March 23rd. It's called The Unbroken by ciel Clark. I think this is a debut author, and it's a North African inspired fantasy. And what got me was there was a cranky princess and a cranky soldier. It's supposed to be rebellion, espionage, and military might. And I think it's supposed to be a sapphic romance involved in there as well. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
Sounds good.
I know, that does sound good. I'm over here like, oh no, my TBR. Oh no.
Always.
So dangerous. Hey, I'm Izzy. I am from Happy For Now. I mostly talk about romance predominantly, but I do read other things like I like gothic, horror, and mystery thrillers, YA fantasy, and all that. Pretty much I read everything, but my main genre is romance. Like 99% of the time, I feel like you're going to find me talking romance. And then, I do the monthly Romancelandia updates where I cover various news in the romance world, which are always fun. And my pick is a romance book out February 8th. It's called Gray Hair, Don't Care by Karen Booth. And this is a 47-year-old newly divorced makeup artist named Leela, and she has a one-night stand with a guy named Donovan James, who is like a marketing guy at this company that she ends up working at as like one of their people. And it's kind of that whole what happens after a one-night stand and you show up to work. The cover is like gorgeous. It's got this like beautiful woman with gray hair on it, and I just cannot wait. Cannot wait.
Awesome. I love it. Great picks. So yeah, again, those will be listed in the show notes if you guys want to check out the titles they mentioned. Those sound great. So, okay, we're at the end of a year that has been particularly wild for everybody with COVID, but in the book world, as prepping for this episode we've talked about, it has been a wild ride, and there has been so much drama and so many things that have come out, a lot of exciting stuff, a lot of like messiness and messy behavior. In fact, when we started talking about this, there was so much that we realized we couldn't fit it all into a podcast episode. So if you want to hear some more of us talking about things that happened in the book world in 2020, there is a live stream on my channel that I will link down below where we talk about some of the other topics. But today we're primarily going to be talking about YouTubers and authors in the book world behaving badly, because there's a lot to talk about here. And yeah, oh boy, did things get messy. And you guys both talk about this kind of stuff, Izzy for romance and Jess book Twitter in general, which is why I invited you to join me in this conversation today. And to like ease our way into this, before we get into people behaving badly, briefly, let's talk about this year. Times Magazine put out a list of what they are calling the 100 best fantasy books of all time.
Oh dear.
Oh man.
Yeah, I wanna. So many feelings about that.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about this. One thing to note is this was curated along with a bunch of authors, including Tomi Adeyemi, Cassandra Clare, Diana Gabaldon, some others. Notably, all of them have at least one book on the list.
Felt like they all had like 2 books on the list.
Yeah.
Not most of them had 2 books on the list.
Yeah.
So, thoughts on this whole thing?
When I was going through it, some of them made sense. Some of them were like classic books that have been out for 50 plus years or whatever. But the fact, like you just said, all of the people who were involved in the panel conveniently had a book on the list, and multiple. My biggest issue was that they counted, or they used it spots for series. So like all 3, I think, Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, why wouldn't you just put that as a series? Save a spot for someone else. That was a big thing I didn't like.
Well, not to mention, some of the books on the list had been published like within a couple weeks of when the list was released. And the vast majority of them were published within the last like year or 2.
Yeah, it was so weird.
Best of all time, and it came out last year. Like, I think it needs some time.
Right. Well, or like it came out last week.
Even worse. And if they had like Cassandra Clare on there, I mean, I guess they were talking, I think their metrics were like influence, and okay, that's fair. But why wasn't Twilight on there then? If we're talking like cultural impact and influence.
I mean, Twilight's not as good as Cassandra Clare's writing to some people, I'm sure.
I mean, it's not.
I mean, I don't read Cassandra Clare, so I'm just throwing shade at her in general that she's on there. But also, I think Twilight, they're probably like, that's more contemporary, even though it's like a weird mix. Situation.
Yeah, but there were so many interesting picks. There are some things that like are arguably not really even fantasy. And they didn't have a lot of major people. Like Robin Hobb wasn't on the list.
So like I'm not a big like I don't read like the giant tomes of fantasy, right? Like that's not my thing. Like I'm like, no thank you. Like I want to listen to everyone I know read them and love them and like hear about them. And, like those sound great, but yeah, no, I'm not touching that. But I like Robin Hobb is somebody I know, and I'm like, how was she? I just still don't know how she wasn't on the list, because everyone I know that's read her books like loves her.
Yeah.
So I don't understand.
I mean, she's a classic. They like this year, I think it was this year, they came out with this gorgeous like anniversary edition of her debut. Like, I just don't
Yeah.
understand. There were a lot of snubs, people who didn't even make it.
So
They're
some
just
interpersonal
strange.
relationships were reflected in the choices, maybe?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
they were very objective, of course, in their decisions.
clearly. Well, also, if we're just going influence, like Sarah J. Maas was not on the list.
Oh yeah,
Like,
That
very
still blows
true.
my mind that she was not on that list.
yeah, given who else was on it. I mean, I don't know. Not that there are some great books on it. And I think if they were saying, hey, here's a list of like interesting, diverse books in fantasy,
Hmm.
like 100 books you might want to check out, like if you want to like read from a diverse group of authors, then great. Yes. But like in terms of like, this is the 100 best, most influential books of ever, that I
Yeah,
find
but they
questionable.
titled it. That's a bold statement
It is a bold statement.
to put out, and yeah, that list. I was like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. Okay. So after that little warm up, let's really get into some of the juicy things that have happened this year because, oh my goodness, there's been so much. So let's start with YouTubers behaving badly. This is primarily booktubers, but other people as well who got involved in some things with books. There's been a lot that's happened. The first thing I have on this list is Rachel Marie was a booktuber. And I don't know if you guys remember, and I don't even know like all the details of this, but stuff started coming out. And it turned out that there was a long history of like semi-abusive and problematic behavior and ways of talking to people. And there were so many people who came out about it all at once. And it's not only, and we can talk about this, but it's not only the fact that all this stuff came out, but then she left and deleted her channel
Mhm.
without announcing to anybody and like shut down her Patreon and everything. And she was in the middle of hosting a fundraiser for another booktuber, Jessie from Bow Ties and Books, to help
Yeah.
cover things that were going on with, because this was in the middle of all the Black Lives Matter protests, and
Mhm.
Jessie
Yep.
was like at the forefront of that. And so she just like disappeared in the middle of all
She
that.
only came back to say I'm very sorry or something. My favorite screen grab ever. It's just that tweet that's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't
And then
remember what it
vanished.
said. Yeah, I was trying because I didn't follow Rachel.
Mm.
So when it was happening, I was like, I'm so confused. Who's RM? And because people weren't saying like
Oh yeah,
Rachel, they were just saying
Mhm.
RM. I'm like, I'm
all
so
the subtweeting.
yeah. And so I didn't catch all of it, but I know that I remember seeing people saying, well, since we're talking about her now,
Hmm.
she did such and such, but I just can't remember exactly. Was it like, I don't know, was it like subscribers of her channel or people that she was friends with?
It was a combination of things. Some of it was, I think, like weird stuff she had said to and about other YouTubers. I don't know. There I don't want to get this wrong, so I'm not going to like be too specific about it, but I know that there was kind of a weird sexualizing comment that was made on another.
She commented on, I think it was Riley
Was it
Marie.
Riley? I think
I
it
think
was.
it was Riley. Uh, Something really sexual and inappropriate. And I also know that she was like emotionally manipulating people, like in a
Yeah.
very high school fashion, I would like to call it, where you're
Yeah.
like, behind closed doors, like you're telling them that somebody doesn't like them, even though that's not true
Right.
situation.
Well, and I heard a lot of that also was going on in her Patreon Discord of like kind of weird power play stuff going on there, which is strange. There was a lot. Like there were, and it was in the middle of so much else happening that I don't know, I don't have as much documentation
Yeah,
of
Yeah,
of everything that happened, but it was
me
definitely a
either.
big blow up.
It
it
was,
was. It was kind of kicked
yeah,
off the drama of the year, I feel
I
like,
feel like
in
it
a
did,
weird
yes.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because it did, and it was like from then on, it was so messy.
it's been like nonstop. It's
Yeah.
June, just sent it over the limit, and it's
Oh my
been
goodness.
ongoing since then.
Yeah, there was a lot. Well, I think it was probably around the same time or maybe after that, and I think Izzy, you were the one who brought this up, but the YouTuber who you previously had the channel We Be Bookin'. And do you want to talk about that? What happened?
Oh yeah. So she there was like a readathon going on during the George Floyd protests. There was, movements on YouTube, BookTube to like not post and other things like, acknowledging like your privilege as a white creator. And she was hosting a readathon, I believe. And like got like all of the tweets are gone. Of course. I went to go dig them up and they're all gone. I was like, y'all, stop deleting everything.
I know.
But yeah, she was basically like talking about how she wasn't gonna do anything in support of that because like all lives matter. And then got called out on her username being We Be Bookin', sounding like AAVE, which it does. Like, I don't think you could deny that. So then she just changed her name, vanished briefly, and has since returned. So,
no one will notice. It's fine.
When you're blonde and you're white, maybe not. Maybe people aren't going to notice. I don't know.
After a few weeks, they forget about it.
I mean, also, like, if you weren't on Twitter, you probably didn't witness it. So there's also that whole situation, right, with a lot of this stuff. I do think, I know when I do my Romance Lady updates, I get a lot of people like, thank you, because I'm not on Twitter and I don't see these things ever.
Yeah. I do feel like a lot of book drama happens on book Twitter, and that's where things always get messy because people do not have a filter. I'm like, you need to think before you tweet.
See, I don't have a filter, but I do think before I tweet.
Yeah. I rarely tweet for that reason. I'm just going to read.
I'm just going to read, as we all should be doing in book Twitter.
Yeah, it's dangerous. Anytime I start to type out a tweet, I'm like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Not a good idea.
Yeah. I think so many things kind of went down right around this time as there were the Black Lives Matter protests were ramping up. And so Twitter in general, there was a lot going on. But you saw a lot of this with authors, you saw a lot with YouTubers. And right in the middle of this, in the middle of Black Lives Matter protests and a global pandemic, we have the reading rush.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
And there were like a few, several missteps. You could, I would say.
Missteps. Good. I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely missteps.
Yeah. From the hosts, starting with the prompts. So I don't know if either of you guys are familiar with or want to talk about that part of it.
So I know, I don't have them like in front of me, but I remember reading the prompts and just seeing some people tweet about them on Twitter, because some of them, in general, they just didn't seem like they were very creative. I know one was to read a book starting with the word to read a book outside. I mean, in part of the world, it was the blazing hot summer of July and it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
I think one was one about color. They just were seemed very simple, not like
they were like a repeat of like previous prompts, right? And also, can we say this is like a build on their misstep with their like their one in March? Was it March they did the stay inside reading rush?
Right.
I just remembered it. My brain just unlocked it. And that was also like
I forgot about that.
they had to change prompts on that one too, because they again just kind of stumble through.
They do one about like read a dystopian or a book about
something,
and people got upset. They're like, why would you have that as a prompt this year?
Yeah.
They were like read a dystopian or something like that for the
in March.
Yeah, well, we're all like,
terrified of COVID. Yeah. Great plan. Well, and then the thing is, I was seeing a lot of people talk about how every year they have something about reading outside and how it's not inclusive. And especially in the middle of a pandemic, when there are people who are immunocompromised, live in cities, don't have access to outdoor spaces for that. And there were, I think the big thing for me was in all of the things that happened, and we'll get into more of it, but their response was so lackluster. The response was like, well, we planned the prompts way in advance and couldn't change them. And I'm like, really? Like those were really hard to come up with, clearly.
It's your readathon.
Like, when did you film it? Did you film it in February and like we're like, okay, we're done. This is happening in the summer. Like, who plans that far ahead for a readathon?
I don't know. It's so bizarre. Well, and I think too, it's become more commercialized, which makes it weird now, where they have all this
Mhm.
merch, way overpriced merch. Can I just say,
Yes.
Yes,
like
The
that?
can was
100%.
like
Like who bought?
$10.
Yeah, wasn't it like $20 for like a paper
Yes.
tracker thing? I
Like
was
a
like,
Yeah, for
one-time
a
use.
flimsy journal.
Yeah.
like what? Seriously? I just
And
yeah,
and they have sponsors. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a commercial entity now.
Venture. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they have like a big announcement and they drop it on Juneteenth.
Mhm.
And then their excuse was they're Canadian and they had no idea.
I'm like,
Right.
you're on Twitter though. Everybody on
Or you
Twitter.
should be. Like if this is
Yeah.
supposed to be for the book community, right? Like if the reading rush is supposed to be about how you're so connected with the book community online, like if you had been on Twitter at all, you would know
Yeah.
that this was happening and it
Exactly.
was not a great idea. Yeah.
So many little things that
Yeah.
added up
And
to
Well,
the
then
grand
but
I
like
was
finale.
say there's one more,
but like
right?
the worst in my opinion, like the worst thing, right? Was was they picked a group read, and they picked Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed, which is a book about um, performative allyship.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They didn't promote the book or really talk about it. Like, I didn't even know until all this blew up that there even was a group book, and I think a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't. They've planned a live stream to talk about the book, and they get on and kind of giggle and say, "Oh, well, we didn't read the book. Oops." And like I'm like, "Wait a minute, like you seriously, you pick a book about performative allyship and then you don't actually read the book."
And instead of like this, like I don't know, the first thought in my head would have been, let's delay this a week and
Mhm.
just be like, hey, some stuff came up. We need to push this back, and like we're gonna
Yeah.
come in a couple days and do it. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, like how many people just delay a live show because something happened? Which totally fine.
But they had been reading other books that week.
Yeah.
Like
I
this
think
Well,
was
they
the
each only read
pictures.
one book.
okay, but they read other things,
Yeah.
and you could have like invited other people on to discuss it who had read it. Like there's so many
Mhm.
other things they could have
Oh,
done
totally. Like,
instead
yeah.
of like, "Oh, how funny." Like
Oh
what?
darn. It was not a good look. And then the apology was very like corporate statement.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It wasn't like it was a non-apology, which I think we've seen a lot of those this year.
yes, so many.
I've also
Oh,
seen a lot of we need to learn how to apologize this year, I feel
yeah.
like. So
Yeah. Which, like, for anybody listening, if you ever need to apologize for something, first of all, like, say, "I'm sorry," and don't say, like, "I'm sorry if you felt," because it's like, no, say you're
No.
sorry for the thing you actually did, and
Yeah.
then, like, say, "Here's what I did. I'm sorry for doing it, and, like, here's how I'm gonna change going forward."
yep.
You know,
It
like,
seems so simple, but
yeah.
I was Googling to see if I could find, and I found like this, I don't know, article about Rachel Marie, if you wanted to go back to that, or if
There was
not,
an oh,
it
really?
just
There's an
had,
There
article
was an
about it.
article?
yeah, I
Wow.
just Googled it, and I don't, it's like bibliocentrist.com. No
What?
idea. It's got a bunch of mess, but it has some of the things, and I was like, oh yeah, that jogged
Oh,
my memory of that,
please, yeah, share.
Rachel did. Um, so I guess with that whole like the protest and the fundraiser that she was doing for Jesse, I guess there was a picture of like Jesse at a vigil, and she
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
that was
I
so
forgot about
bad.
that.
Oh my god.
and her caption was this amazing human, this amazing black human, and
Oh
people were like, it's
It
kind
was
of
it was super
weird,
weird.
and
Yeah, she did, like, a
yeah,
screen grab during, like, a really intimate live stream that she did. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, I went to
yeah,
that live. It was very like it was just a moment of silence. Like it was very emotional and a lot to partake in. But it was not like I can't. That's like going to a funeral and taking pictures the
Yeah.
whole
yeah.
time. Like,
What a powerful moment.
and then being like, this was
Oof.
so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It weird. I guess just when then people started coming out and saying things that they had, I guess creators of color were saying they experienced like microaggressions. I
Mm.
guess she had at one time compared the word smut to like the N word. I don't,
Oh,
I don't,
right. Oh my god.
saying people shouldn't be judged for what they read. That she separated. the author from their work and let people enjoy things. I guess when people were talking about a problematic book, I don't know what book. But it said she was accused of talking over minorities who found the work offensive. So it just keeps going. Like, jokingly suggests she and another booktuber should start a booktube porn channel. I don't know.
That was Riley. That was Riley.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was weird.
And she also, like, I mean, obviously using junkie is not, like, cool. Like, that's not great. And people, like, tried to get her to change it.
Oh,
because it was like the book junkie trials, and like she was like, "Who cares?" basically about it.
Whew, yeah, it was a lot. Yeah. That good on somebody for actually putting up an article about it.
I know, and it keeps going, and I'm like, oh, there's like a lot of tweets and
that has a lot.
Okay, like, so yeah, send that to me after, and I will put that in the show notes if people want to like see the details. Wow, that's a lot. But we do have more to talk about. We have lots more. So, I guess like one probably just brief one. I didn't grab the name of it, but there was a booktuber a couple years ago who went on this kind of like alt-right white supremacist rant and then dropped out of booktube, came back kind of like in still doing stuff, but like I think got radicalized to the alt-right and gets talked about in a book that came out this year called Sisters in Hate that I read. And it was so bizarre reading it and being like, wait, I remember that. And she's now part of like alt-right groups, which is bizarre.
So I listened to that book too, and I was like, that's so weird. I wasn't watching booktube when she did that video, but I remember or hearing it in the book, and I guess her name, I don't know her real name, but like Bree Faux Show or something.
Yeah.
On YouTube, but I guess it was like, we don't need diversity, or booktube doesn't want to be diverse, and I honestly wish I could watch the video, but
yeah, no, it was wild. I mean, it's been a couple of years now, but it was a lot. So
I remember going around on Twitter and being like, "What on earth is happening? What a take!"
Yeah, but then having that come out this year in that book was it's so bizarre.
That book is fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. And then, okay, this one I think is a little more complicated, but we could talk about it. Hannah Witten is a big YouTuber who is a sex educator, and she put out this video this year and titled it Books That Make Me Horny. Okay. And I watched the video because I was like, okay, I want, like, people are freaking out about this, but I want to like actually see what she's saying. And I think it's up for discussion. My take on it, her major misstep was titling it what she titled it, because like some of the points she was trying to make in the video, I think are valid ones, but sensationalizing it in a way where it makes it look like you are sexualizing minors or like queer boys or whatever, like that, it becomes really problematic. I would be curious to hear you guys' take on this.
Yeah, I watched the video too because I was like, I had never heard of her before, and so she does make good points, because essentially she's saying like what your brain, like your brain and basically your naughty bits aren't always on the same page. So you may be reading something and your brain's like, oh no, these are minors, or this is problematic, but you might be tingled in your nether regions, which all fair points.
Right.
But then her using these books like Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, it's like she used a lot of queer stories of minors. I don't know if she did it for really clickbait or if she thought that was the best way to go about it, but yeah, it's definitely her titling, and I think kind of the books she chose, not the best.
I mean, I feel like it's just, look, it's creepy in a way when you're gonna sit here and tell me that these books, I mean, Red, White, and Royal Blue was on the list, I think, that is adults at least, but the other books were mostly minors. and how they make you take. And I get what she was trying to get at. I just don't think that delivery or execution was appropriate.
Yeah, like other examples might have been
how
better.
You wouldn't see backlash coming from that is really weird, because we already have the issue of like fetishizing gay men in society, like much more than we do anyone else in a weird way, like especially white women. And it was just like so uncomfortable. I was just like, I'm so uncomfortable right now. And I read romance books, and I love books that are extra filthy and dirty. But that was not it. Like, I was just like, you literally, like, if she just picked all adult romances, it would have been fine.
Yeah, or at least books targeted at an older audience, because like I think, you know, I mean, there are, like, I on the one hand, like, I get what she's saying, that like you shouldn't feel like something's super wrong with you if you have that effect from something that like wouldn't be okay in real life, or like, you know what I mean, like that is true.
Yeah. Yes,
but like you have
absolutely.
to be but like you have to be so careful in how you deliver that, and also, you know, like recognize that like if you're unable to like separate that from reality, then you probably should like go to therapy. Like I you know, like I just think she should have been more careful in the way she delivered that information.
Yeah,
especially with an adult talking about minor books. Like, I feel like if she wanted, she could have framed that so many ways with romance and like all the different. Dang it! When my friend was telling me about some books she would, was it a gargoyle? Like all those, you know, like in real life, would I really be turned on by a gargoyle?
Or a vampire? Like, no, probably not. You're probably gonna run away.
And this sea monster turning me on in this book? Sure.
You know, but do you really want to do the alien? No, not really. It's just a book.
But it's a book. Yeah.
But the writing is, you know, it was just very strange. And then I don't know her apology or her statements, and because I think she said something about like, I need more hot gay books or hot lesbian books or something, and people were like, could you not?
Yeah, it wasn't a great look.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last person we have on the YouTubers behaving badly list is Sasha Alsberg.
Oh, Miss Sasha.
Oh man.
Miss Sasha.
Boy, oh boy.
So who wants to take this?
I mean,
Jess, you have a great video about this, so why don't you?
I think it was the end of November. Someone sent me like a tweet, but I think it was Marness who said something like, I wonder what would happen if I was selling ARCs and traveling during a pandemic. And I was like, who is this about? But I didn't see a lot of other talk, and I'm not on Depop. But so Sasha Alsberg, I guess if people don't know, is big in the booktube community, and she's a published author now.
I'd say she's like a former booktuber, because I feel like she's not been on in a long time, right?
Well, she hasn't
made videos in a few months.
Yeah, but when she does, there's still have book content, and she does book stuff on like TikTok and Instagram.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then so she had Zenith a few years ago, but whatever. I guess she has been trying to move to London, and she was living in Boston and traveling back and forth to London. Some people in my video said that she did need to do all that traveling for visa. I have had to get a visa to move to Italy, but I mean, I didn't have to travel to Italy, so I don't know. Maybe it's different for the UK. But she's been going back and forth, and you know, sharing on her Instagram stories of being out and about, so not like quarantining when she gets to London.
Yeah, taking a lot of pictures.
Like when you went to London, you were supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks before you go out.
Yeah.
Strictly. And I pulled up a timeline I found last night about some of the stuff she was doing. So.
Well, and like the fact too that her audience skews very young. She has a lot of teenagers following her. It seems very just, I can't think of the word right now.
It's irresponsible.
Irresponsible. That's exactly it. Yes.
Right. Just to flaunt it. Like, it's different. If you needed to go, sure, you were moving to London, whatever, you need to take care of paperwork. But it's a big difference just to like be going back and forth. And I guess her boyfriend, who's another author, there's like, she was going to visit him, and they were out together.
I think her boyfriend is it Taran Matharu is her boyfriend?
Yep.
Yes.
Interesting.
Which I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And then also in the same time, she was selling books on Depop, various states of condition of the books, and then also adding in ARCs, but saying the ARCs were free. But if you looked at the price of like the book package
Oh man.
compared to like she had a
Yeah.
book that was middle grade maybe, and it was like $40, but free ARC that came with it,
Yeah.
Well,
and
the Priory of the Orange Tree arc is like
that
super
one,
valuable, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that one
And
was the most egregious.
and she like it literally you like no.
Well,
She put
what
super
was weird
value.
though is it
She
would
said
be like
price
books.
reflects the ARC.
Yeah, price reflects. Well, what's weird though is there would be books that were like chewed up by her dog, like
Yes,
like that
they were
nobody would buy.
$40.
Where it's like, oh, here's two old books chewed up by my dog and an ARC, $50. Like no.
And people bought them. I'm like, why did she?
And then people bought a forged signature. I mean,
Possibly. Oh yeah,
Ooh.
signature gate. Oh
it
my
does not
gosh.
match anything I have signed by her. So
Okay,
It
okay.
said Sarah
Here,
Janet ran out of ink, and I'm like, so you
yeah.
think Sarah's team wouldn't come with a box of Sharpies?
Okay, in her defense, I will say this. This is the only thing I can think that maybe could be why it looks weird. Is I remember, because it's a Court of Wings and Ruin, I think. I think it was during that book tour, Sarah J. Maas had a wrist injury and couldn't sign very many books. And so, like, maybe if it was during that time, her signature looked weird because of her wrist injury. Like, maybe like if we
Maybe.
give her the benefit of the doubt, but it's pretty suspect. Like you guys can find like pictures probably on Twitter or
There's
on Jess's channel.
comparisons.
Check out Jess's
Yeah.
channel because she's got a whole video with like tweets and everything on this. It's just, oh man, it's wild.
she's continued to be pretty terrible because she was in the UK right now still, I think.
Mhm.
And they're in like
Mhm.
tier 4 lockdown where she's at, and she's still like out and about.
Oh Lord.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
I thought
and-
she was supposed to take a break from social media, is what she said. But I guess that lasted a week.
if
Well,
that.
Well, and I know of several people who kind of know her who reached out to her being like, hey, like maybe this isn't like the best way to do this, and she's just blocked them. So basically anybody who like isn't going along with what she's saying, she's blocking. So
Ooh.
yeah.
Yep, she blocked. I know Jess from Club Books reached out because like they've talked before, and she blocked her immediately, would not engage. And I'm just like, you're guilty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with it. Wow, that's awful.
Mm-hmm. Very messy. Yeah.
Shame,
It makes me
shame.
sad when people who kind of helped build the community go be dumb.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
why?
yeah. I mean, just like do a real apology and admit that you messed up and you'll do better. You know what I mean? Like it's not that hard to do. I just
Well, other countries, like I don't know how seriously England's taking it overall, but I like people are getting arrested and like
Mhm.
forced watched like into quarantine because they're not following the laws or the rules. So like I don't know. I don't feel like that's worth the risk if you're moving somewhere on a visa.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. There's no way. We're not going anywhere. We are not traveling till we have a vaccine. Sorry, family, for Christmas. Like,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so authors. I don't know if we're even going to get to all of these today, but like, we can talk about quite a few of them. So there have also been a lot of authors behaving very badly. Like
They were
it
on
has
the naughty
been,
list for sure.
yes, it's been a messy
2020
year.
brought it out. Like
Oh,
I feel
man.
like everybody got stuck in their house and they were like, let me show the world who I really am.
Like, I'm just gonna tweet. Okay, so the first thing that I remember happening was this stuff with Sarah Dessen. Okay, so Sarah Dessen is a huge best-selling YA contemporary author. She has a huge following. Like I think like a couple 100,000 people follow her on Twitter or something like that, or 100,000. Like it's a lot. And she tweeted this thing freaking out about an article that had been written, and she sort of blocked out the name, but it was really easy to go and find. But she basically was complaining about like how like people are always just hating on YA because it's for teen girls kind of thing, without giving any context to what this article was about. And her followers ended up going and finding the person mentioned in the article and doxing her and harassing her, and it was like really, really bad. Come to find out, you read the whole article, right? And it's an article about a program of books for freshman college students to read together. And the quote in question was saying something like, well, you know, like it wasn't hating on Sarah Dessen books, but it was saying, well, like instead of, like, somebody had suggested that, but instead they were reading things like Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. And I'm like, really? Or like, and it wasn't even anti-YA, because at one point they've picked The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas.
Yep.
But it was like, okay, we're freshman college students. Sure, let's pick books that are meaty, that have things to dive into. Not that like there's anything wrong with Sarah Dessen books. That's fine. But like, is that really what you would be picking for a college course? And she took it out of context, and this was wild to me.
And all her friends, any other authors,
they all jumped on the train.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Roxane Gay, Angie Thomas, so many were like, I mean, there were some pretty mean comments directed at the girl that was quoted in the article before they saw the whole thing, and some apologized. I think I remember like Roxane Gay saying like, I messed up, like I didn't see but some of them didn't, and I'm like, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a interesting. This happens in romance a lot, right? Like articles get written specifically in the month of February in which people basically talk about Fabio and how romance is awful or some other take. And it felt like one of those moments, but for YA books. And I was like, oh, you guys are having your moment. I was like, welcome. Meanwhile, Romance Lady is like, we're on guard at all times because it's like a challenge. Can you talk about romance without talking about Fabio? Like, come on.
Well, I think like the lesson here, right, is if you see something that looks shocking on Twitter, like do your research before you jump on the bandwagon, you know?
Yeah.
100%.
A lot of people could use that.
And also, like, the power differential here is wild, right? Like, that's part of the problem, is you have this adult, successful woman who's, you know, I mean, she's like in her, I want to say she's like in her late 40s, early 50s at this point, right? Like, you are a grown-ass woman, and you're going to go whine on Twitter and, like, send your followers to attack this college student or this, like, young woman who, like, nobody knows. Like, that's messed up, right? Like, and we're going to see that again in this list of, like...
It's so, and I hate when they're like, well, I didn't send them. And it's like, at this point, if you've been on Twitter, you should know that if you have a following and you put out something you don't like without blocking out the person's name, your followers inherently are going to go pile on that person.
Yep.
And this is how it works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I think maybe a good transition point from this, given the topic, is talking about the whole thing that happened with Charlie Bowater and Jay Kristoff. When do you guys want to talk about
that? Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, you're fine. I just didn't know. I was gonna say, I know that like somebody tweeted like, wouldn't it be nice if somebody besides Charlie did some covers? They looked a little different, and I like her art. It's beautiful. Do not get me wrong, but
it is. I mean, she's having a moment right now where a lot of YA publishers, I don't know how they contract that, are using her art. So a lot of books covers do look similar because it's her style.
Well, and I think it was a very, very small blogger. Like they don't have a big platform. They were very small, and they tweeted this one thing. They didn't even tag her in it. And like, it was mild criticism. It was like, I love her art, but like, it would be nice if, and part of the thing is, right, she tends to draw characters who are like thin and white. Like, yes, you know, like just always.
Yeah.
And it was like mild criticism. So Charlie Bowater tweets about this, like upset.
Yeah. And then Jay Kristoff retweeted it and basically sicked his fan group on him.
Yeah.
Like on this poor, like tiny blogger.
Reply? Yeah. Because he said the internet is full of worthless noise or something like that. Like, your work is amazing. And it was like, so you're you're saying, because a lot of people also were upset because the person who tweeted it first was a Black booktuber,
Yeah.
Mina Reeves.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, did y'all not read the tweet? Because she complimented her art, which I agree. I like her art, but it's like there's been a string of books coming out with the same art by
that's
Charlie
right.
Bowler.
Was it Mina?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because I think she's grown a lot since then, but she was very small at the time.
Yeah, she was then.
And she had liked Jay Kristoff's books, and then to have him like come at her and call her worthless noise, like, oh man, like that.
Yeah,
it's just messed up.
And, and then I think Charlie went private, of course, and I'm like,
just don't do that. Like, don't go. I mean, don't go after small creators. Don't go out. Like, just keep your mouth shut. Have a private chat group.
I don't understand how these people don't have group chats, because that's. We're not going to lie here. We all have group chats in which we complain about things.
Hell yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes. Anytime I think of something, I send it to somewhere where people I trust. I know they're not going to screenshot it, put it on the internet. I don't tweet those things, but so many people do group chat text, but they tweet it.
Yes. Like, don't do that.
She's such your friend, email her or something.
Yeah, or have like a chat. Yeah, I mean, we all need it. I think if you are on the internet or in the public eye for any length of time, at some point you're going to need a group of friends that you can be like, oh my gosh, people suck right now, and I'm feeling this way, even if it would be totally inappropriate to say that publicly.
Which is fine. We're human. We're gonna have emotions.
You gotta blow off steam sometimes.
Right.
You see a tweet that annoys you, you blow off steam, you're like, oh, this is so silly. Like, why are they doing this? And then you move on. You don't like respond and be like, how dare you?
Oh my gosh. Well, like, and who was it the like a couple weeks ago, there was an author who commented on a small blogger's.
So Connie Schultz, is that who you're thinking of, who attacked Laura?
Yes.
Well, okay, she didn't attack Laura. So like Connie Schultz wrote some book. I don't even know what it's called. And Laura's a friend of mine. And when I saw it, I was like, oh no. And she literally, like, I think she has 250 subscribers on YouTube. She's got maybe 100 Twitter followers when this happened. Tiny.
She's tiny. And like, and she didn't tag the author. It was like a Goodreads automatically posted tweet where she like basically DNF'd the book and and the author like found it clearly. Like, if you are an author, do not search yourself on Twitter, or like, and if you do, don't comment.
Proves. Like, why are you searching your own name on Twitter?
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
And she had, like, I don't know, thousands of followers. So they all are in Laura's comments saying, you really didn't need to say this. This is very mean.
Oh, she wasn't even that mean. She was just like, it wasn't for me. I'm not going to finish it. Like,
yeah, she was just saying it wasn't for her. I was so
as long as you did.
Oh, Lord.
I felt so bad. And then, I mean, there's other authors doing it this year too, even more, showing up in comments where they should not be.
Yeah, well, like, I think one that I'm seeing people talk about is Steven Erickson, who is a huge, very successful fantasy author who wrote the Malazan books, has been going and finding YouTubers talking about his books and leaving these lengthy comments, kind of mansplaining his own books to these booktubers. Like, don't do that.
Creepy. That's so weird.
So weird. Well, and it's funny because of that, there's been chatter about it. And I know people who are like, well, I was maybe interested in trying the series, but I'm not going to now because I don't want him up in my comments, like, saying weird stuff.
Yeah, hard pass. I mean, I haven't read it, but I don't want to now.
Yeah, like, just don't do that. Like, that's not good author behavior.
No.
One that I just found to be really wild that happened recently was everything that went down with Jessica Cluess.
Ooh.
I have screenshots of that whole Twitter thread. Like, oh my goodness. So, so there is a woman who is a very well-respected educator. She's a Black woman, and she's not even like, she's not an author, she's not a blogger, she's an educator. And she had tweeted some stuff about how we need to have more inclusivity in the classics that are being taught in school,
Mhm.
and that it shouldn't just all be like white people, like, which, yes, fair,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And Jessica Cluess, who is a YA author, went on this lengthy, very bizarrely aggressive rant about classic books, and said some nasty stuff in there too towards this woman, saying like, you can like, I think at one point one of the things was like, you can like spin on like
Sit on a
sit on a
tack
tack or
and
something, like,
spin.
and spin. Like,
Yeah.
it was bizarre. And she got dropped by her agent, which
Mhm.
go agents. But yeah, thoughts on that? That was yeah.
I was so what was so bizarre to me was how many tweets, like, I'm like, you didn't stop after, she didn't stop after 3, after
No.
6, after 9. I feel like there were like 15
Oof.
tweets. And yeah, like you said, so aggressive. Like, one was like, you hack, you shouldn't call yourself an educator. I was like, oh, it seemed really personal. Like, do you have something against her personally?
It was a lot.
It was weird. Okay, I'm going to admit this. I don't read a lot of classics.
Mhm.
They're just not my thing.
Me
So I
neither.
don't really read them. I mean, I've tried to read Jane Austen and I love romance. I just can't get into it. But like there are some I want to read this year and in the future, but I just don't like this tower people put these white author classics on, to be honest, because it's all white authors that they're like elevating and
Mhm.
think are the like end all be. I just don't get it. Like I don't get it. Like I looked up her thing and somebody actually replied to her apology saying that like Orwell was a prophet and anyone who disagrees is a fascist. And I was
What?
like, what? What?
What?
People get very intense about classics. And so look, like, I do read classics and I like classics, but I also take the point that, like, the traditional Western canon of classics is very white and very
Mhm.
limited, and like, it
Oh,
should be
totally.
Mhm.
expanded, and that shouldn't be the only thing we're teaching. So like, do I think there's a place for it? Yeah, sure. But
Mhm.
anyway, but this whole thing was just, it blew
And
my
I also think, honestly, not forcing teens to read classics is a good choice. Like, read them in college when your like brain's more developed and you can actually have discussions.
I don't know. I mean,
I mean, some of them.
so maybe I was a weird teenager. I read a lot of classics as a teenager. Like, in high school, I was very into classics.
Oh,
So I know a lot of
I
people who stopped reading in high school because of
Yes.
classics. So that's
Yeah.
why I think
I
of
was
like,
reading Spark Notes. I hated it. I think just having more options. I know there's
Yeah.
really important ones, and of course in her thread, because I'm looking at the tweets, she brought up, of course, like some of the better ones,
Hmm.
because she's trying to say, well, this person made this social commentary, and you don't think that's important. It's like, sure, you named those 10, but there's so many other ones that have less great content in them, and no one's, I think it's like she took it as the educator was like, stop teaching all classics before
Yeah.
1950.
Which
And
is
it's
not
like,
what it was.
no.
Like, it was so bizarre. Yeah. That was, ugh,
I
yikes.
Because one of them, yeah, the sit and spin on attack. And then she said, remember how Louisa May Alcott wrote Little Women to uphold the patriarchy? If you do, stop taking drugs, you hack. And I'm like, what?
Like, what?
What
What?
were
they're
you
just
really sleepy when you type these? I just don't. It was
I
so much.
just the reply, like honestly, like if you're ever bored, I think that's a fun one to go look up and like look at some of the replies she got from
So
people just to be like,
bizarre.
what is this high horse you are choosing to stay on?
Well, what's funny too, like, that one in particular struck me as funny because, like, Louisa May Alcott actually wrote Little Women because of the patriarchy. It wasn't what she wanted to write, but it was what she could sell. She really wanted to write like salacious murder stories and ghost stories and stuff, which she did. They just
Mhm.
didn't make as much money. It's just
Of
ironic.
course.
I don't know. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's tackle like a couple other things on here, because I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but Mackenzie Lee.
I feel like I laugh every time you say something because I'm just like, oh god, yeah, that was this
Yeah.
year. That was this year.
It was, I mean, so much happened this year. So this was
Yeah.
funny. And like Mackenzie Lee is a very nice person. I've met her. I've talked to, like, I actually did an
I have
interview with
too.
her. Like, she's really lovely. But some of her choices on the internet are a little
She makes
a little suspect.
she's very nice in person, but she makes bad choices.
She does.
And I can no longer support her because of these bad choices.
Oh man. Okay, so who wants to talk about this one?
Oh god. What was it? The beginning? It was early in the pandemic, right? Like when everyone was on lockdown.
Yeah.
To help her local bookstore, she's
a bookseller. She works as a bookseller at a bookstore. Yeah.
In like Utah or somewhere, I think.
No, in Boston.
No? Boston? Okay. I don't know. I was like somewhere cold.
Yeah, in Boston. And she's also an author, but yeah.
Yeah. So she like was saying that if you asked her to, she would write a note to you or something in the books you bought, but she was actually signing other people's books and drawing in them and making commentary. I was
in the book, not
in the book, not on a note. Like if I bought a book and that was what was inside of it when I said sure, leave, like I want a fun note, I would have been so mad.
I mean, people were asking her to do it. I think as part of it is like she had people requesting it, and so she was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, why not? Let's just make this a thing, and maybe we'll get more orders." So like, I don't think she really fully thought through the implications of what she was doing. Like, But yeah, so like she would like do a little doodle and write like funny things in a book by another author. And people were requesting it. Like the person who bought it did request that she did it, but then she was like taking pictures and posting them on Instagram
and Twitter. And people were like, why are you doing that?
Well, and some authors were pissed about it.
Picture.
Like,
because it's like, I didn't ask you. Like, I'm looking up this picture, and it's a book. It's Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, and she scratches out Laura Dean and writes her name, and then signs her name huge. Like,
oh my god.
I think the biggest thing is she was doing it on the page where if you met that author, they would sign.
Yeah.
And that just makes it really awkward. Let's be real. Imagine if you're going to meet them and you're like, oh, hi, will you sign this? And they're like, why did Mackenzie Lee sign my book?
Yeah. Well, and I know Rin Chipeka was really mad about it.
Yeah.
Like, she was not happy.
Yeah.
Because some of them... Yeah, there's like a drawing on one. I don't really care about this book because it's Donna Tartt, but still, it had like the goldfinch. It says "Too long for me, Mackenzie."
That one kind of cracked me up.
See, and like I loved that book, but it is very long and very slow.
So just like I'm seeing all like I didn't realize how many she did, but there's so many.
There were a lot.
Like,
I mean, that's the thing is I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, it's funny, but also like, you know, maybe if you're posting it and you're also an author, maybe you should ask the authors if they were cool with it. I don't know. I just, it was not a great look.
Cringy.
Cringy is
very cringy.
Yeah. Like, you know, I don't think it was malicious, but cringy.
Like, I'm being cool. This is original. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Maybe not.
Okay. I mean, you know, as always this year, J.K. Rowling has continued to be a mess on Twitter.
Joanne. Damn it. Joanne.
And this year it's been like anti-trans stuff. Or anti-non-binary really is like, yeah, like having very specific ideas about what gender is and isn't, and kind of went off.
Well, and she's kind of done this before, actually, a little bit previously, but this year she really tripled down. I don't even know.
Yeah,
quadrupled down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's not dying on that hill. She's on the mountaintop.
Oh, she's dead on top of the mountain. I feel like she's like, this is where I will stay.
Well, and apparently, I heard her latest Robert Galbraith book. She integrated some of the stuff into the plot line too.
Yeah, it's like a trans man or woman as the villain.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
It's
like way to ruin our childhoods.
because she's done, like you said, the things before, and it seemed like things usually went away and people forgot. But this time, I don't know if it was just the quadrupling down that people were finally like, don't post this anymore. Don't, she's a turf, all
Yeah.
these things. So this one, I think, was her final straw, at least in the book community, which it's so weird to me. I feel like my Twitter feed is the world.
Mhm.
I'm like, all of these things are happening, and then I'll like talk to my husband. He's like, I'm like, you didn't see it on Twitter? And he's like, no. Like, we have very different lives. So I'm like, no, this person is canceled, and this person did this. He's like, that's in your world that you're living in right there. The larger world, I don't know, is the same. So it's really weird. Like, I know a lot of it, there's articles and stuff, but in the wide, people have been saying other things about Universal, and I'm like, if you think a corporation like Disney, Universal is going to do something like that would stop making the money, I doubt that. So it's really tough, and it's just really hurtful that I kept being like, maybe she's going to she's going to learn something during
Yeah,
this
no,
lockdown. She's
no.
going to read.
I mean, she's also like a billionaire at this point, and like,
Yeah.
just, yeah.
I mean, her residuals from everything are probably massive.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can only imagine.
Yeah.
And I think it was this has been especially hard for us because, like, I mean, a lot of us grew up on those books.
Oh, yeah, I did.
And now, like, as an adult, like, as I've revisited them, I've noticed some of the things in there that are not great.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, like, representation goes. And, like, there's some transphobia in the book itself. And, like, I didn't notice it as a kid because I didn't know,
Yeah.
I didn't know those things when I was in grade school and
Right.
middle school. But yeah, it's sad. And I think it's been interesting how much like those of us on the book internet have been like, nope, we're done.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I see things in the outside world and I'm like, oh, you don't know, do you?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I think
It's
like I
so-
think for me, and there people have had such different responses to it, but kind of my main thing is I'm like, well, I'm just not going to talk about them on my channel anymore. Like that's pretty much, I'm like, I don't, especially because I have friends in the community who were personally very hurt by the things that she said and did, and I'm like, I don't want to exacerbate that. Why,
Yep.
100%.
Yeah. And I've had people come at me and about this a little bit and sort of be like, well, what are you just gonna like lots of authors do problematic things, like are you just gonna be like this about everything? And I was like, no, but like I can also choose for authors who are still alive where I'm gonna give my money and my attention. It's my platform, and if I don't want to give time and attention to J.K. Rowling, I do not have to.
I mean,
Yeah.
I literally have a friend who messages me and she's like, do I need to know anything about this author before I dive in?
Nice.
She's like, I just want to know now before I like fall in love with their books. And then you're like, by the way,
Yeah.
bad news.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's see, couple things. One, and I think we'll maybe be brief on this, and I'm going to direct people to a series of videos that I will put in the description. But the Omegaverse lawsuit.
Favorite thing of 2020. I'm not going to lie to you. My favorite thing.
Is so bizarre. So Izzy, why don't you give them like a quick overview of like what happened? And then guys, if you want details, check out the videos by, is it Lindsay Ellis?
Yeah, it's Lindsay Ellis. So Omegaverse is this wild thing that spawned out of fan fiction. And it's mostly men loving men romance and involves a lot of weird things. And basically, Lindsay Ellis did a whole like video essay on the world of Omegaverse, I guess you'd call it. I don't read these books. So like I have like that weird like, outer layer knowledge. And then the lady, what is her name?
I don't remember. But she did it not just about the world of it, but also about this lawsuit because she sued other authors.
Yeah, so that author, she's claiming like it's hers and you can't use it.
That heterosexual Omegaverse tropes that
Mhm.
belong to her, which like
Yes.
you can't copyright a trope.
Yes. hmm And then she like sued. So first she sued them, and like Lindsay started talking about that. And then she came back and she tried to sue Lindsay Ellis and Courtney Milan,
For
who
defamation or something.
yeah, for defamation. And like if you don't know, Courtney Milan is a former Supreme Court justice clerk.
Yeah.
Like, do not come at her.
No.
This is not somebody you're gonna like sue, because she's gonna be like, excuse me.
Oh my gosh, it's so bizarre. Highly recommend the 2 videos by Lindsay Ellis. I'll put those in the show notes if
100%.
people want to check them out. Like they are so entertaining and bizarre.
Yeah, the funniest, honestly, drama to come out of 2020 to me is a Megaverse,
100%.
because I was like, this is not the subgenre of books that I ever expected to be like having a video essay person on YouTube talking about.
No. Well, and like there was a New York Times article about the lawsuit, and like it was that was wild.
Yeah, again, just not the genre I would ever.
No.
Let's talk about it. Oh, Megaverse. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so since we're running out of time, the last thing I want to talk about here, leaving it on a more positive note, is we've seen a lot of social activism happen this year in the book world, and some really cool things coming out of that. So I want to talk about a few things there. Izzy, why don't you start off by talking about what Fated Mates has been doing?
So early on in like, I guess the fall, pre-election, maybe October, they started doing what's called Fated States, where they did live phone banking together. And this was kind of the big kickoff, I think, in the romance community, at least, for like some ground level activism for the election and getting people out to vote. It personally inspired me to actually do postcards. I can't call people on a phone. I literally like cannot. I wish I could. I wish I could phone bank, y'all. Like no joke.
I get it. It's a struggle.
I cannot do it. So yeah, it was really fun. They would do it together live. They did like live podcast recordings where you could fill out your postcards. They kind of like really started a grassroots effort with Indivisible, I think it's called, who came out of the 2016 election saying we've got to change the Democratic Party to like actually make changes, like how we're doing this to get the right people into office. So it was just, I don't know, it made me really happy. Yeah. I've been very happy to see this shift around us of people being more active.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think the Romance Landia in general has been really active in this, which has been cool. The other thing that kind of came after that was Romancing the Runoff, which was organized by Courtney Milan, Kit Rocha, and somebody else. Do you remember?
Alyssa Cole.
Alyssa Cole, of course.
Yeah, Alyssa Cole.
Yeah. And this was amazing. I was a part of it a little bit. But they did a auction where all of the proceeds went to a couple of organizations getting out the vote in Georgia for the runoff election, and people could donate items to be bid on. And I did, I my like little couple $100 of it, there were some much bigger things, but like I donated a couple manuscript critiques. There were people who donated really cool experiences and virtual hangouts and books and like all kinds of stuff. And they've raised over $500,000 from it, which is incredible.
It was wild.
Amazing.
So cool.
It was such a good run.
Yeah. And just like seeing everybody come together and the excitement around the bidding wars and everything was so
They
so
also
cool.
Mysteries did one too for Georgia.
Yeah, that's right.
There was a spin-off mystery one that happened. It was just wild, like to see the amount of like celebrities and stuff. And like we one of the things I helped run, Romance Sparks Joys, we donated to the romance one. And I was just like, was watching it all happen. I was like, this is wild.
Yeah, it was.
And there were other auctions. Like there was an auction for Puerto Rico this year, also that happened. And was there another one, or is that the only one?
I think there was something else too. I know that like
the racists in Texas.
Oh yeah. Well, there's also been, I think, something raising money for stuff in was it the Philippines?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there was.
So there's been just a lot of that, of like fundraising and social activism, and then when everything was going down this summer too, there were just a lot of people individually and in panels doing streams on YouTube talking about race issues as they relate to the booktube community. I was part of a town hall conversation around that, and there was just a lot of really good energy around, like, let's really talk about issues that often get swept under the rug, which I think was great.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add with any of that, Jess?
No, I just I remember looking up Romancing the Runoff and just being shocked that Stacey Abrams, who is the Queen of Georgia, is also a romance
Yes,
writer.
she is.
She
I was
is.
like, wait, excuse me, I need to go read those books. And she has like a political thriller coming out next
Yes,
year.
I cannot wait.
I'm
It's-
going to get that. She's incredible.
Yeah.
She is. I highly recommend looking up. She's tweeted it if you haven't seen it. Like some of the ads that one of the ladies in Georgia like ran about her, trying to like slander her, and it was funny because she's like, she writes these books, and I was like, the horror. She's an author.
Oh, the audacity, romance.
Well,
no.
it's funny too because it's not like they're like erotica or something. You know what I mean? It's like, just,
No,
I
know.
It's like, but it's funny.
What a take.
Yeah. No, they're fun. They're like romantic.
No,
I read one of them after I found that out. But they're romantic suspense. And what does she write under? I can't think of the name right now.
Selena Montgomery.
Yes.
Selena Montgomery. Yeah, I think with that person with the ad probably is trying to target all the people who just look at romance as a whole as like ugh, or like less than. And I think especially being on like BookTube and seeing all the drama and stuff, and the more I've learned about romance community and just how much money romance in general generate, and then seeing all this like positivity, I think it's that people just need to it's like 2020, like get it together. Romance is more than just smut. Even if it was, it's still people want to read it, and it's like such a vast community. But I think it's awesome because I think Romancing the Runoff started off with like, maybe we can raise like $20,000, maybe we can get, and they've gotten surpassed that. So that's been super dope.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So cool.
I hope they can win those runoffs in Georgia.
Yes.
Goodbye, please.
I mean,
I wonder if by the time this episode goes up, we'll
know.
I don't know. I don't know the date.
I don't know January
the 5th.
Oh, so yeah, it'll by the time. So it'll be over by the time this episode goes up. So fingers crossed.
Oh my goodness. Please. Oh my gosh.
Oh man. Well, thank you guys. This has been super fun. We are definitely over time, but hopefully everybody enjoyed the conversation. You guys were wonderful to have to talk about this. Again, everybody, this has been Chapter 3 Podcast, and I'm your host, Bethany. You can follow us on Twitter at Chapter 3 Podcast, and you can also find me on YouTube at Beautifully Bookish Bethany if you want even more bookish content from me. The next episode will be available in 2 weeks, and this episode's bonus content will be available to patrons in the next few days. Thanks for listening.